In this video, we're going to show you how to install fuel injectors on your Jeep Grand Cherokee located in your lower intake manifold. Now to go ahead and start this here, I want to go ahead and open up the hood, locate your fuse box on the passenger side here. You're going to open it up. We want to go ahead and find our fuel pump relay fuse, and it is going to be this red 10 amp right here, right beside this white block. I'm going to use a pair of needle nose pliers, gently grab that and pull that fuse out. Now at this point here, you want to go ahead, hop into the vehicle, press the start button, let the vehicle run until it shuts off. Press the start button one more time. The vehicle should not start again. If it does, just let it run until it dies again. At that point there, come back over here, reinstall the fuse. And what this does is this drains the fuel from the fuel injectors and that fuel line. So we can go ahead and disassemble it with minimal amount of fuel loss and no pressure on that line. Go ahead and close this up. To access your battery, you want to go and open up the back passenger door, slide the passenger front seat forward, and access this panel right here. Put your hands underneath this little flap and lift up. On the front side of this panel is going to be two more clips further up. So slide your hand up underneath and pop those up. Go ahead and remove that panel and set it aside. We're going to use a 10mm socket to loosen the ground terminal here. Go ahead and wiggle that terminal free. Going to grab your upper engine cover. Just gently pry upward on this. We're dislodging the cover from the plastic push pins in various positions on top of the engine. Set the cover aside. We're going to use our flathead screwdriver, loosen our clamp here on our air intake tube. Over here by the throttle body, we have our air intake temp sensor. We're going to use our small pocket screwdriver, and you want to push in on this little tab right here and pull the connector off. Sometimes you can use your finger on there. Ours is stuck a little bit. Pop that off. And then right behind it, we have our hose clamp here for our intake tube. We're going to use our 5/16 socket. Loosen and remove that. If you have a stubby flathead screwdriver, you can use that as well. We're going to go ahead and remove our intake tube here. Now underneath, this is supported by plastic push pins like this here going into a rubber grommet. So we're going to gently lift up, popping that out. Then we can remove our hose ends and set this aside. Now we're going to go ahead and remove our wiper cowl. That's going to give us better access to the hardware along the back of the engine. Remove the hood to cowl seal. We're going to use our trim tool. Pop up on the little retainer button here. Pull this up. Follow it over to the passenger side and do the same over there. Remove this cover. Unscrew this here. There's a little tab down in here that we need to pry this off of. Pop that off. We're going to repeat this process for the driver's side. Want to remove our wiper blades and arms here. Want to pop up on this cap. We're going to use a small pocket screwdriver. So pop this cover up, and underneath we have a 5/8 nut. Loosen and remove that. Before we remove our wiper arm, if you want to, you can go ahead and identify the placement of the wiper blades by using a piece of masking tape and just run it across the bottom of the wiper blade to leave a mark. We have a nice dirt line right there, so that's going to leave a mark for us to go ahead and know where we can rest our wiper blades. So just fold this up, give it a little wiggle, and pop this off of the wiper transmission. I'm going to throw the nut back on here for now. Now right on the back side here, there's a little tab or button. You can normally get your screwdriver underneath there and pop that up. Just going to throw the nut back on there for now. Now our upper wiper cowl comes across and comes up the top of the fender. There's a couple clips in here that you can use your trim tool and just be gentle. You won't mark up the fender or chip your paint. There's just little clips in here that you need to undo. Here we go. These clips, what we're doing is when we reach down inside, there's a center of these here that we're pushing down on to release the locking tab on the inside there. There it is. So there's the 3 of them there. We're going to do the same for the other side. Here it is. We get all 3 of those out there. Gently lift up on the cover. Do the same on the driver's side, and then we can work this cover off. Now our wiper transmission itself has 2 10mm bolts holding it. There's one over here on the driver's side, another one in the center over there. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove these. That is now completely loose. It is a capture bolt, so that means it'll stay in place while we remove the transmission. This one here, we're just going to pop that one out. Now in the center over here, there's a rubber grommet that goes through a bracket, so we can just take the transmission, slide it towards the driver's side, up and out. You can see the rubber grommet right here. Now before we completely remove this, we need to disconnect the electrical connector from the motor. Press in on this little tab, grab that connector and just wiggle that free, and then set the wiper transmission aside. In the center section right here, we have 4 10mm bolts to remove this bracket right here. 2 here, 2 on the cowl. On the passenger side, right behind the strut tower here, there's another 10mm bolt. Now behind your passenger side valve cover, if you follow this straight back behind your transmission dipstick here, there's another nut in the back over here. Right behind your strut tower and to the right of your AC lines, there's another 10mm bolt. We can use a short extension. Grab that bolt, pull that out. Using our extension and swivel socket, we're going to go ahead and get to this upper back bolt. Pull that out. On the back side of our cowl here, we have our wiper harness. I'm just going to use our trim tool and go ahead and pop that off of there. Now we can go ahead and maneuver this, twist that up and out, and set it aside. Before we pull any of our components here, we want to go ahead and cover our throttle body. And you can use a vacuum if you want. We're going to use our air hose and clean off any debris around the top of the engine so we don't drop anything down inside. We now want to separate our harness from our throttle body. Now there's a little red lock tab right here. I'm going to use my pocket screwdriver and just come around the back side here and push that red lock tab out. Push down on the tab on the front and wiggle this off. Slide this off. And then disconnect the little clip here. I'm going to come around to the map sensor on the back side, pinch down on this tab, pull that connector off and just swing that harness off. Tuck that off on the side there. We're going to twist our map sensor towards the back and pull up on it. Just a rubber O-ring sealing that up. Go ahead and set that aside. There's a vacuum hose on the back side here. I'm going to go ahead and twist it off, and ours is stuck a little bit, so we're going to use a pair of hose pliers. I'm going to gently grab this here and just twist it. Finesse that a little bit. We don't want to crack the intake, but now that we have that loose, we're going to twist it and pull that off. On the back, there's a vacuum hose here with a little clip. Undo that clip, separating the other hose. Using our trim tool, we're going to release this harness. There's a little clip on the back securing this to a bracket right on the back here. We want to get this harness out of the way. Pop that off. Here we go. On the back side here, we're going to use a pair of pliers. I want to pinch this hose clamp here. Open that up, slide that back. I want to remove this hose off the back side of the intake using a pair of hose pliers. Go ahead and grab that and we'll loosen that. And wiggle that off. Back side of the throttle body is a vacuum port. Grab this hose here. Give that a little twist to break that free. And lift that up and off. On the back passenger side here, we have a 10mm nut. I want to go ahead and loosen and remove that. So once you get the nut off of this stud right here, on the back side, there's another stud. There's supposed to be a nut here, but someone was already in here before. There's another nut you want to go ahead and remove off of that. And there's a bracket right here that goes down to the back side. There's a 13mm nut at the base on a stud. It's hard to see, so I'm just going to put my hand back there with a socket and a ratchet. We're going to loosen and remove that nut and remove this bracket. The whole stud came out, and grab that bracket. On the driver's side here, we have two brackets on the intake manifold, and there are two 10mm nuts. We're just going to use our gear wrench, loosen those, and remove these. Set those aside. Pop our vent tube off. And right here on the side of our air box, I'm going to pull off this here and just kind of tuck this over. We can now take this, swing this out of the way. Using a 5/16 socket, go ahead and loosen the upper intake bolts. With all of these removed, I'm going to grab our intake, pull it up, and remove it. Now that we have the upper intake off, you want to take some towels and put them in the intake ports here. We want to prevent anything from falling down inside the engine at this point. So go ahead and tuck these in there. Once we have those there, go ahead and grab that insulator pad, remove that, set that aside. Now before we remove our lower intake, we want to go ahead and clean up any other last minute debris that might be here, so when we lift this up, nothing falls down inside the engine. Use your vacuum, use the air hose, whatever you have, but you definitely want to clear this. I'm going to use our trim tool and pop up our fuel injector harness buttons here. Just little retainers. I'm going to pinch down a little tab on our ignition coils, pop these off. Now the fuel injectors have red locking tabs on them. So what we want to do is lift up on those little red locking tabs. We're going to use a pick to get underneath the red lock tab and just gently pop these up. And then just beyond that red locking tab, there's going to be a little pinch clip. And pinch those and pop those off. Go ahead and swing that off to the side. We're going to go ahead and repeat this process for the passenger side. Now that we have our towels set in the ports here, we're going to use a T30 Torx bit and loosen and remove these 4 screws holding our fuel rails in place. Now there's a possibility there might be a little bit of fuel pressure or fuel left inside the fuel rails here as well as at the injectors. So always wear safety glasses when doing this job here. And it's always good if you have a couple shop rags or towels prepared, ready to go. That way there you can place those down when you start or if you start to lose fuel. So you're gonna grab the fuel rail and gently lift up. I'm going to go ahead and do the same on this side here. So as you pull this up, you can see some of the injectors have the O-ring. This one popped off. This one was peeling off. Grab that O-ring, set that aside. Then you want to check the other side as well. It is not up inside, it was right there. Set that aside. Now if this pulled off, we can now grab these injectors and give those a little wiggle and pop these up and out. Now, if some of these are giving you a hard time, you can sometimes use some hose pliers here. Just rotate that injector, just gently kind of grab it there and give it a little pry and a wiggle. There is another O-ring down here holding this in place. Here it is. So we got the injector out And the O-ring is down inside there. So set that injector off to the side. Want to make sure that we don't drop this junk down inside the engine there. Then we can grab that O-ring, pull it up and out. So I'm going to clean out this port. Now the process for this is the same for the other 5. Go ahead and give this a quick little spray. We want to make sure that we have a clean port for our O-ring to drop down into. You're going to take your new injector here. There's new O-rings on here. The blue goes on the top, and then the black ring goes on the bottom. Now to help these pop in a little bit easier, take a little bit of spray solvent. Go ahead and give that O-ring a quick spray. And press that down. And it literally pops right into place. Now with that injector in, go ahead and repeat for the other ones. In our particular case, we're just replacing this one injector. So if you need to install these other O-rings, simply line them up and rotate them right around and pop them back onto the original injector. You want to make sure that they are clean before you do this. You can wipe those down, pop that in. Now we can bring our fuel rails over into position. Before we press these on, what we're going to do is take a little bit of spray solvent and spray the tops of these blue O-rings, and that will help our upper fuel rail pop right into place. Fuel rail popped on the driver's side. Do the same for the passenger side. Okay. Now installing the fuel rails here, the injectors are actually keyed. So there's a tab on the fuel rail that fits into a notch on the injector. Make sure those are lined up. Otherwise, you're going to be pushing on this all day long and they're not going to pop in. So just rotate the injectors until you can see them line up. And that'll pop right together. Now with the fuel rails installed, you can grab the 4 screws. Get these lined up. Now when tightening these down, you just want the screws to bottom out. Boom. Once you feel it seated, that's it. You don't need to tighten it down any further. You don't need to make them super tight. You're just securing the fuel rail to the lower intake. And seated. Done. Do the same for these 2 over here. Seated. I'm going to install our harness here for our fuel injectors as well as the ignition coils. Now installing a harness, you want to make sure that the red lock tabs are in a full up position, otherwise the connector won't pop on. You're going to feel it snap in, press that red lock tab down, do the same for the others. And then we have our ignition coils. Super simple, just line them up, push them on, you're going to feel them click into place. I'm going to repeat for the passenger side. Once these are in, you can install your little plastic button retainers here and the valve covers. Before we install our upper intake, we want to go ahead and install our insulator here. Now we're going to remove our paper towels from here. And we already went ahead and made sure that the bottom of our intake was clean. Let's go ahead and line this up. We have 2 studs on the driver's side of this intake that need to go into brackets. Now with those lined up, we should be able to bring our intake over. We're going to just kind of double check, make sure there's nothing caught in the way. Next step is to go ahead and start to get our bolts caught. So we're going to go around. Now that we have our bolts started on the intake and everything is lined up, you can give that intake just a wiggle and you can feel that it's seated and it's not loose or wobbly. Once you don't have any wobble to it, we can now go ahead. I'm just gonna gently snug. We're not tightening these in because there is a torque procedure for these here and a torque pressure, so just get them pretty much seated, that's it. Now this back one here, we did have to source a new bolt for this one here. Now that we have all of our bolts installed on the upper intake, let's go ahead and torque them down. Now when I go ahead and torque down our bolts here, there is a particular pattern. You can go ahead and follow along on the screen here. And we're gonna torque this to 89 inch-pounds, starting with the rearward bolt in the back here. Now we went ahead and torqued everything down. If you want to, you can go ahead and do that same procedure a second time just to make sure everything is torqued properly. At this point here, we'll go ahead and start to install the rest of our components and connectors. Now on the upper intake, we have these 2 brackets and we're going to install the nuts on these here. Get that one installed. Get one on the rear bracket. Using our 10 millimeter, we can go ahead and tighten that down. Just want to snug those down. I'm going to bring our vacuum hoses over, drop those down. Secure your differential vent tube right there. I want to install this bracket on the back side here. I'm going to bring this up and get that lined up. Now there's 2 studs, one on the back here, one closer forward right behind the throttle body, and then we have the stud here to install down below. And once you get that stud started, we're going to try and thread it in as far as you can by hand. And just kind of reach back there, and we want to snug that down. I'm going to install the 2 10 millimeter nuts. It's going to be one here. It's going to be one that goes on the back side here. Just gently snug that down. I'm going to do the same for the back. Now I want to go ahead and pay attention to this vacuum hose right here. This vacuum hose attaches to the back side of the intake. So we're just going to slide this in. And once it's in position, we'll just go ahead and grab the clamp for it. I'm going to slide that up. Grab your pliers. that in place, we can go ahead and grab our hose here. And snap that on here. I have this hose here to pop onto the back side. We have a little retainer button right here that needs to go into the bracket. Line that up and push that on. Bring your harness out and about. We have this harness here to press on. Get your connector lined up onto the throttle body. Press that on. And we have our map sensor here. We're going to line that up, twist it, and swing it around. Then we can install our connector onto that. Press it on, you can feel it and hear it click into place. I want to go ahead and set our back cowl cover back into place. Make sure you watch for the wiper motor harness as we slide this back. Okay, to remove our retainer here. Line this up. Pop this on. Just snug it down gently. We're going to repeat for the driver's side. We're going to install the lower securing nut on this back stud. We're going to install our bolt right down here. Get that started. I'm going to go ahead and snug this down. I'll go ahead and tighten down this bolt. Let's go ahead and repeat for the other side. All right, we have that bolt started there. Snug that down. Let's go ahead and get that one snugged down. I'm going to go ahead and bring our wiper transmission over. And what we want to do is take the rubber grommet here and slide this into the cover or the tray. Popped it into place. So we have the rubber grommet into the bracket down here. I want to go ahead and get this bolt started on the driver's side. So you have the long bolts that go on the top of this bracket. Get those started, and then we have the two lower bolts that go into the lower pan. Go ahead and install the other wiper transmission bolt here into the bracket. Well, let's go ahead and tighten everything down. Tighten these down here. And slide our cowl cover up and in. And let's get this side lined up. Go ahead and line up the passenger side. Now we can press in our clips here into the fender. I'll repeat this process for the driver's side. We're going to line up our wiper blade with our mark on the windshield and then simply press this down. I'm going to install the nut. Now we're going to snug that down, leave this open. Let's go ahead and repeat for the other side. Go ahead and torque this down to 16 foot-pounds. Do the same for this one here. Once that's torqued, pull that cover over, snap it down. Install your cowl seal here. It's a little plastic button. Pop that in, and it works that into the raised ridge there. Pop that in, work our way around to the passenger side. Line up your intake here. Work that onto the throttle body. The air box here, or the air intake tube, has a rubber grommet that this should be popping into. So I'll pop it onto the air filter box. Feel underneath for that grommet, and it'll pop into place. Using a flathead screwdriver, we can go ahead and tighten down the clamps here. Just gently snug that down. All right, snug that down. And we have this connector here for their air intake temp sensor. Line that up, press that on. You're going to feel it and hear it click into place. Now we install the engine cover here. There's going to be some rubber grommets around. You want to line these up with the plastic post sticking up. Go ahead and press that down, pop it on, and you're all set. Reconnect the ground terminal. Slide that down into place. And let's go ahead and tighten down the terminal nut here. Make sure that's good and snug. Give that terminal a little wiggle, make sure that is locked on pretty good. So now go ahead and install the lid. Now on the bottom of the lid here, you're going to have 4 of these little tabs here. I want to go ahead and line those up. Snap those down, and you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.